This video covers the permissions section in Module 2 of the Site Administration Manual. So it includes the permissions topic, permission inheritance, and the securable objects that you can change the permissions to. So out of our 3 securable elements, we will look at first the permissions. There are some 30 permissions or over 30 permissions that sit inside SharePoint. Now if you try and assign those permission items individually to each user or group, the problem with it being is it's too hard to manually apply those to users. You could make the wrong combination and give them the wrong permissions by mistake. It's hard to identify the purpose of the combination. If you tick 6 or 7 boxes, how do you easily identify what that permission is granting? It's also difficult to define the same permissions to other users in a similar role. So if I was going to add 3 or 4 users, or maybe 2 or 3 groups with similar duties, I'd have to remember all the combination of the permissions I gave to the first one. So to solve this, we use permission levels, something we've already recognized earlier in this particular set of videos. So we have a contribute, we can also have an approve, but we've also seen for our owners the for control, and for our visitors we've seen the read only. Here we have 3 groups, members and authors who contribute, and the approvers who will use the approve permission level. And then we'll assign our users inside those groups. So here we have our users on the left there. We also got this security group, which is an Active Directory group called Sales Team. And if you look carefully at Amran Shah, he's been directly associated to a permission level. Now this is possible. It's not very common, but there are some examples, some advantages where you may require to do this. So groups can have multiple permission levels assigned to them. This is quite good if an author, for example, has a combination that includes from 2 permission levels. Rather than make a 3rd permission level that combines together, you just tick the 2. But why would I want 2 groups to have the same permission levels if they just had, for example, contribute? Well, we've already seen this in one of the earlier videos, where our members were able to manage items and documents, and so are authors. What we also did with our power users was to assign them to tasks and to workflows. And what we'll do later on is we'll show how we can use audience targeting to show information onto a web page that is directly associated to that particular group. So here are our permission levels: for control, design, contribute, read, limited access, and view only. When a user or a group is assigned to a permission level, that permission level automatically hides any elements, any hyperlinks that they are not required to use or see. And this is called security trimming. So an example is when a site owner goes to the site actions, they'll see a lengthy list of commands. A site member will see a slightly shorter list, maybe about 6 or 7 items, and as you can see on the right, a visitor will only see 1 or 2. Other areas where you would see security trimming, maybe on the top link bar, or some of the items that could appear down in the quick launch pane. But when it comes to permission inheritance, it's a very clever way of making sure that a group doesn't always have the same control over sets of information. I liken permission inheritance to a family tree, remember. So where we have our groups and our users at the very, very top, this could be our family. And here we have our top level site, and this is the father who has a family, and the subsites directly underneath are his children. So like a family, you have rules, regulations, and parents guide the children using these rules and regulations. I have 4 children myself, and I know that sooner or later one of my children, or hopefully all of my children, will grow up, get married, have children of their own, and when they leave the nest, where I'm the owner of the house and my rules are basically gospel, when they move house, their rules will be gospel and their children will be obeying their rules, just like my children obeyed mine. So where I was the owner of my sites, what I may find is when I go to my child's house, I become a visitor and therefore have restrictions. Maybe I won't be able to use the toilet or something like that. But the important thing is this works just like the site collection. Site collection, you have these owners, members and visitors, and at the top level site we define what permissions they should have. But as subsites are created, that subsite might have a different purpose, different meaning, and therefore a member of the top level site may only need to be a visitor of a subsite. Another example is if we have the finance team have their own site collection, where they may have subsites like payroll, credit control and accounts. The payroll, which could be shown here in the pink zone that's been broken, might be quite secure information, and they don't want showing the payroll and the employee figures and salaries, so they could break inheritance and change the permissions to the groups and users that the site collection has. So how do I assign these permission changes? Well, that's done by choosing the securable objects that require a change in permissions. So what are these securable objects? Well, the one I've been describing already was our sites and workspaces, and if you've ever created a workspace before, especially a document workspace, you may have noticed that by default you are the only person that has access to that subsite. It automatically breaks the inheritance and makes you the owner and sole accessible user. In addition, you can also set permissions to your lists and your libraries, and within those lists and libraries you can further break permissions down into the individual items and even folders. Now in the video module 2 part 2 I actually created a group called power users, but I gave them full control, which is a bit too much. As a site owner, I won't be able to create the sites and look after the team, but my power users are there for me to delegate certain tasks I'd like them to do and manage on a more regular basis than I can handle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a permission level to manage. So I'm going to go to Site Actions, Site Permissions, and you can see I'm at a parent site where I am able to change the permission levels and create them. So I'm going to click on permission levels. There they are. Notice that full control and limited access are greyed out. These are two I cannot delete. They're imperative to the site collection and to the subsites. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a permission level, and I'm going to call this manage. Just going to quickly add a description to maintain and control the content within the team site collection. To that permission level will now define people that can manage the content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and really I'd tick all the list permissions, such as managing lists. I will allow them to override checkout, so in case anyone's ill, they've checked the document out, my power users can check them in or discard the checkout, giving control back to other members of staff. I'm going to add items, allow them to edit, I'll allow them to delete items, open, viewing versions, delete versions, and they can even create alerts. And also I do need to give them the ability to access and view the pages for the list and libraries and the forms. But I'm not going to give them any site permissions so much. This will be retained by the owner. What I will allow them to do though on my behalf is manage alerts. Now the little trick to it is, if you're not sure about tick boxes, don't tick them until they find they need them. You can modify these permission levels at any time, and it's always a good idea to give too little than too much permissions. That's it. I'm going to click the create button now, and I now have permission level called manage. What I'm going to do now is just go back to my users and groups and change the permission level to my power users. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this site permissions in the site actions. So they're my power users, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick that box and edit the user's permissions. So you can see they've got full control. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the manage control and disable the full control, and click on OK. And there you go. My power users are now able to manage my site.